If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. Next thing you'll see is a nuclear bomb in the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to our special show, Cold War 2.0, with our dear friend Tarik Cyril Amar. How are you doing, my friend, today?
I'm fine, Kevork. Thank you. How are you?
I mean, especially after watching Netanyahu speaking in the past 30 years, I think this is a good start, because speaking and lying, it seems that they are synonyms for Benjamin Netanyahu. It seems that Iran has been 2 weeks away of acquiring a nuclear bomb in the past 30 years. And up until this moment, they couldn't just make that 2 weeks steps or achieve this two-week step, despite the fact that the United States allegedly, I mean, this is what they claim, they have quote-unquote obliterated the nuclear program of Iran in the past 12 days war against Iran, the joint offensive via the United States and Israel as we speak. But apparently, the nuclear program which Iran has been building for the past 20, 30 years, although it has been obliterated by the United States, they restarted it somehow, and they are again 2 weeks away from developing another nuke. So make it make sense. If you believe that, we have a very big bridge to sell you.
I'd sell you an aircraft carrier, carrier with working toilets.
Exactly. That was hilarious. I don't know if that was deliberate or not, if somebody has sabotaged or not. I mean, there is lots of rumor about it. But I was watching a stream or a podcast by Tucker Carlson this week, and this video is neocon hysteria, and he's basically talking about there is an intention from the Israeli side to use the American army to sabotage any attempt for diplomacy with Iran, between the United States and Iran. I would like to start this with you, Tarik, because the argument here in this, let's say, conversation and this podcast on Tucker Carlson's show is that pro-war networks can corner Trump, either pressure him into striking Iran, or Israel could strike unilaterally and force the United States into the escalation ladder anyway, turning the president into a follower rather than a decider. How do you read this dynamic? Is it mainly lobby media pressure, like the flood the zone effect, or is it more structural? For example, U.S. force posture, alliance commitments, and tripwires in the region that make a clean no basically politically impossible to say for Trump?
Obviously, I am not privy to the type of information you would have to really answer that question confidently, but I have my own ideas about it. We are all being forced to have ideas about these things, right? Look, if you take a step back, right? We all talk about this all the time, the relationship between Israel and the United States. If you take a step back, it actually comes into better focus how incredibly odd this relationship has become. We are looking at an extremely small state that is very credibly accused of committing genocide. I, of course, am absolutely convinced that they are committing genocide. They have committed every other crime in every other book. Literally, there's nothing criminal Israel hasn't done. Torture, apartheid, all the war crimes you can think of, they're all there, right? It's very small. It's very dependent on the United States. If you look at financial flows, if you look at armaments, ammunitions, and so on, if Israel didn't have the United States, it would probably have been overrun by now.
Yes.
Because Israel is a state that is incredibly aggressive, belligerent, and quite simply murderous, even mass murderous, all around itself. So for our friends who still haven't understood this, it doesn't require anti-Semitism if you live in Israel's neighborhood to want to be rid of that state.
Yes.
And I will once again explain, wanting to be rid of a state is not the same as wanting a genocide. If somebody is looking for genociders, that's the Israelis here, right? They're actually practicing the concept. So Israel couldn't exist without the United States. Absolutely not. And yet, on the other hand, is the single most powerful state on the planet. Unfortunately, this is still true. We are seeing its decline. It will end relatively soon, historically speaking. But right now, the United States, if you put everything together, is still the single most powerful state on the planet. It's also a rogue state, and I mean this literally, which has put itself not outside, but over all existing international law, right? And it's becoming ever more radical about this. But it is an incredibly powerful thing. And the oddness, the oddity of the relationship between this extremely criminal dwarf state, really, which is Israel, and this other also pretty criminal but extremely powerful state, is that Israel seems to really decide on policies for the United States. And no one can explain this. And that, in addition, is being made very difficult for us because we are put under pressure that we cannot actually acknowledge one of the most obvious hypotheses, which is that the Israel lobby, not the Jewish lobby, again, the Israel lobby in the United States has become so powerful that it has very successfully subverted the American state, right? I think that's the explanation. I agree with Mersheimer here, who acknowledges that, right? I don't agree with Emmanuel Todd, right? I immensely respect Emmanuel Todd. He is, in my view, the smartest Frenchman alive, but I don't agree with him on this. I don't agree because he thinks that Israel does not actually dominate the United States when it comes to foreign policy in the Middle East, and I think it does. How exactly that works, right? Returning to the specifics of your question, is it by enormous media influence? Is it by, we've talked about this before, is it simply by buying? And Israel is massively buying American politics and the Israel lobby, of course. Or is it by forms of blackmail? And I think blackmail is extremely important. Now we come to something very important here. We now have to assume, every skeptical observer, every reasonable observer, I would say, has to assume that Donald Trump himself is terribly deeply involved, compromised by the Epstein files. I really think so. And not just the files that have been published. They have not been properly published. We've talked about this before, but they are there, the 3 million, but also by the other 3 million. And then all the information nobody even talks about, for instance, where are all the films that Epstein certainly made to blackmail his targets. I won't call them victims because these men weren't victims. The women and the girls, they were the victims. These men were the targets, right? So we know almost nothing yet of the Epstein legacy. That is my honest opinion. The FBI, as we also discussed before, has once let it slip that there are literally terabytes of information in the Epstein sort of universe that it controls. If you combine that number with what they have released in terms of bytes, raw information, it's even less. They haven't released half. They've released a fragment, a tiny fragment of everything that is there, right? And my opinion is that Trump is absolutely blackmailable, that he must have done horrific things. Howard Lutnick definitely has too. I disagree with those who think that Trump is only trying to protect, only in quotation marks,
I agree.
trying to protect his friends and sponsors and so on. No, I think this is a fight for personal political survival. I think he has to protect himself because he has done horrific things as well. And then come all his friends, right? Now, that doesn't exclude other motifs. Trump wouldn't be Trump if he didn't want to turn a dime. And of course, there are all these schemes in which he and Jared and Witkoff are trying to make profit, right? In Gaza, for instance, directly on the graves of the genocided. Quite literally, I'm not overdoing this, right? This is literally what they're trying to do. There's the way in which they're monetizing the board of peace. But if you told me, give me the one, not two, give me the one key reason why Trump can't simply walk out of this and say, I don't want this, it's too risky to attack Iran, I think it's that the Israelis have horrific compromising material on him. And one last thing, it's a footnote. There was a weird moment in the Jerusalem Post, I think, recently, where the Post itself almost cracked a joke, and they were saying, look, in the so-called 12-day war last June, when Trump helped us, but he didn't help us enough to attack the Iranians. Trump left us hanging. He didn't fight as long as we wanted, right? He may even have stopped us. And then that thing says, and then a few files appeared. And look where we are now. It was a clear reference to saying, oh, look, we have information on you. Maybe even more is going to come out. And that's in the Jerusalem Post. This is how brutal and open this is like now.
And I find it very highly likely that these Epstein files, some of them, fraction of them, have been released partly to blackmail Donald Trump or persuade him to go to war against Iran. That is highly possible that this was a deliberate job, a managed job, just the tip of the iceberg, just for Trump and the rest of the so-called elite in the United States who know what the Epstein class have on the political class and the security class in the United States. And that is really effective, apparently, in shifting Donald Trump's policies from someone who used to say, the worst thing we have done in the past 20 years is to go to war in Iraq, and we have spent trillions of dollars, destabilized the region, killed millions of people, and now he wants to go to a bigger war in Iran. So what has changed? He didn't, in my opinion, this is the same person, but it has to be something behind the scene that we cannot really see. So definitely blackmail is part of it. I also find there is another layer, Tarik, in this, and that is the Zionist banking dynasties basically standing behind Israel and using Israel again in their attempt to dominate and control different regions around the world. And those are not state actors. Those are non-state actors. And despite that, they have enormous financial, let's say, leverage. They have trillions of dollars, and they can definitely influence or use Israel. And this is what I'm seeing increasingly, that Israel is also being instrumentalized by some of these very wealthy families. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Always when we have Tarik on the show, hundreds of you already join in the first 10 minutes, which is amazing. I would really appreciate it if you only hit the like button as you're watching this stream. It would also help this program immensely. And everybody is welcomed, including Zionists, by the way, like Sammy, who comes here and says, I'm here to counter anti-Zionist talking points. Like, you will fail. And the funny thing is, do you really believe Israel wants to remove the mullahs for no reason at all? And no, I believe there is a reason, of course. Israel has a mentality of a zero-sum game. It has a supremacist and a domination mentality, and they want to dominate the region completely. And once they are finished with Iran, they will shift their focus to other countries. And you, Sami, on X, on my account, you said, when we finish with the axis of Shia, we will go after the axis of Sunni. So after the axis of Sunni, who are you going against? This is the mentality you guys have been grown up, that you are not realizing, but you're exposing yourself. That's why I let you and others to comment on my X account and also to come to Syriana Analysis, partly because I want for the rest of the people to see what is the mentality. You unfortunately grew up on this type of mentality, and that is there is no life without fighting. There is no life without war. There is no life without domination and subjugation of other people. That's why you're receiving lots of resistance and backlash against you as a Zionist, and also against the Jewish people as a whole, because Israel is claiming to be representing the Jewish people. So that's why there is also an increase, partly because of this approach, in anti-Semitism around the world, because Israel says we are the Jewish state and we represent the Jewish people. We do separate here on this show between what is a Jewish and what is a Zionist. And that's why I want you to comment more so that the people see what is the mentality of the Zionists again. So welcome to our show. This was just a quick commentary about this case. Tarik, my friend, there is another point which I was, when I was checking this podcast, and this was with Clayton Morris, who is a friend of the show, and I have been on his show. This conversation basically suggested something darker than defending Israel, that removing Iran as a coherent rival consolidates Israeli regional dominance, and that even major costs to the US, Europe, and Gulf states, for example, energy shock, recession, depression risk, may be acceptable or even useful because Israel is planning for a future alignment shift away from Washington. Do you agree that Israel's strategy is to use US power while simultaneously accelerating US depletion in this case?
You know, I've watched that interview, and I watched the long talk that Tucker Carlson himself gave before Clayton Morris came on that show. And I think, in my view, personally, Carlson is certainly right about one thing, which is that for the Israeli Zionist elites, the United States is just a tool. Right. So I'm trying to see this from Tucker Carlson's perspective and where he lives and where he tries to change people's minds. And as an American and a conservative, I think Carlson is trying to reach Americans who live under the horrible illusion that Israel is their friend, right? Of which there are many, not only committed evangelical Zionists, those strange types who think that, you know, they need Israel to commit all its crimes so that their second coming can happen and whatever, right? Not only those. There are a lot of Americans, conservatives very much, but also still people who are not conservatives, whatever you call them. I won't call them left. There is no left in America. It's minuscule. There are a lot of Americans who really believe that Israel is something like an ally, a friend, a thing they can rely on. And I think that what Carlson is trying to do is finally wake these people up and make it clear to them, no, the relationship between us, the United States, and Israel is that we have used them as we use everybody, but, and this is where it gets so strange, they are managing to use us massively, and they're using us against our own interests. I mean, if you want to put this in a very, very simple but actually accurate way, I think the message here is Americans wake up to the fact that Israel makes American soldiers die in its wars, that we, the Americans, are fighting for it without any decent reason, right? If there ever can be a decent reason for war, definitely we don't have one here, because we are fighting it on behalf of another country with other interests. And not only is that another country, a very strange one, by the way, it's also a fascist apartheid genocidal entity, right? So it's a very odd relationship. And I think Carlson is trying to get at that and to wake Americans up. But he makes a second argument, which is, namely, that Israel is now interested in America's decline and ready to shift its relationship with a sponsor, or whatever you call that, to India. And of course, Carlson makes that particular comment against the backdrop of the visit of India's leader, Narendra Modi, recently in Israel, right? And I think, personally, I don't see the evidence for that yet. I don't think the evidence for that is strong enough. But I do agree with Carlson that Israel is massively exploiting the Americans, and that the Americans better wake up to that and change it. I would also go for a weaker thesis of what Carlson is saying. I think he's right about something else, that if the relationship Israel-United States is instrumental, if Israel uses the US, then of course they have no sentimental barrier to at some point change, right? I don't think it's really like India and it's happening now, but his fundamental point that Israel could just go for someone else, another country, if they needed to, that I accept. And I also accept his point that they have absolutely no interest in helping the United States.
Yes.
In fact, there may be very far-sighted people, very evil, very far-sighted people in Israeli policymaking who are looking at the demography of the United States, who are looking at the shifting opinion in the United States regarding Israel, are basically looking at it and saying, look, we are still controlling this place when it comes to what we need, but in one generation, it will slip from our control, and also it might actually turn against us. So in that perspective, if they're really thinking like that, then a war in which the United States destroys Iran for them, and Iran massively damages the United States, no more downside. No more downside.
You know, Tarik, this other interview of, I don't want to make this all about Tucker, but that other interview with Mike Huckabee was so brilliant that in the past, I don't know, since I opened my eyes to politics, I have not seen an interview like this as revealing as this one when it comes to America's relationship with Israel, especially when it comes to who gives the right for the people of Israel to be there. On what ground do they stand? Under international law, under the religious right, for example, which has no place in international law whatsoever? And also, what is the border of Israel? Where does it start and where does it end? And it was quite obvious that Huckabee doesn't mind Israel to occupy it from the Nile to the Euphrates, and he said that would be fine for him. I mean, he says for now there is no, let's say, a project to occupy all these territories because they don't have the capacity and the capability of doing so. But if they were attacked and they won the war, then they could expand. This was the premise. And I was like, this is coming at the perfect timing, because now we have 20,000 ISIS affiliates in Syria on free run in Syria. US intelligence says, oops, they ran away from the whole camp. There are thousands and thousands of ISIS militants among them. And I'm like wondering what would happen if now ISIS, which I believe is not an independent actor, is tasked or allowed to, through negligence or just turn a blind eye, to attack Israeli forces inside Syria, inside the newly occupied territories inside Syria. Then Israel can say, we're under attack. This is for defense. And now we have to expand further to Damascus, because Damascus is part of the Greater Israel project, right? So I was like, am I crazy? No, I'm able to connect these two things now.
Yeah. Well, there is an old interview, but it's authentic. People can find it with Bezalel Smotrich, right? The Israeli, they're all fascists, frankly, in the government, but the hyper-fascist, right? The extremely explicit fascist, the I'm proud of it fascist, who just can't stop talking about it, right? And in that interview, he actually says that according to him, his reading of the Hebrew Bible says that Damascus will be a suburb, not of Israel, but of Jerusalem. And then he looks at the interview and he says, just Jerusalem, you get it? So he wants us to know that, Damascus, we take that on the way. If Damascus, in this completely insane world of ideas, becomes a suburb of Jerusalem, then of course the country, whatever else you want to call it, Israel, I mean, where are they supposed to stretch? To the Black Sea? I mean, if I heard that stuff in Ankara, I would begin to think about this very, very urgently. No. Well, you said too. We're going to deal with the Shia axis and then we're going to go for the Sunnis. You better think. All these Gulf monarchies, Jordan, and even Turkey, you better think very carefully.
Yeah.
Because you haven't turned against Israel, and maybe it's damn time you do before you are the next ones. So the ambition of Zionist fascism is incredible. But we know this from fascism. I'm sorry, this for a fascist system is not in principle that unusual. Italian fascism, we forget this somehow, had a massive imperial project, which it tried to realize, committing mass murder in Africa. Right? German fascism, of course, known as National Socialism, is definitely a form of fascism, had an enormous imperialist project called Lebensraum, where they wanted to overtake the whole East, as they called it, which meant at least half of what was then the Soviet Union. And they tried to implement it, and it led to about 26 million civilian and military casualties in the Soviet Union alone, right? So mass murderous projects of expansion are very fascist thing. And Zionism is a form of fascism. I think we all have to stop making complicated moves around that simple fact. It's a form of fascism. And the poor people who have come to have to live with this, you know, they have not yet managed to defeat that fascism. The fight against fascism is an anti-fascist fight, very, very clearly to me. And you know, especially in Germany, people who call themselves anti-fascists and then take the side of Israel while it's committing a genocide and terrorizing, destroying its neighbors, I don't even know what to say anymore. These people really haven't got their heads screwed on in the right way.
Tarik, we have 2 articles published this 1 week in the Washington Post and in Axios. They are almost similar. Trump's top general foresees acute risks in an attack on Iran. So these both outlets basically describe Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane warning Trump that an attack, that an Iran strike carries serious risks. For example, munition shortages after sustained support for Israel and Ukraine, limited allied base, overflight cooperation, and the danger of a prolonged escalation. While parts of the political circle push limited strikes or insist it would be quickly won. Now, in practical terms, what does the reported lack of regional basing or overflight what does the reported lack of regional basing or overflight support imply about U.S. feasibility, escalation control, and the likelihood of mission creep in this case?
Look, we have, I would add one thing, right, to your point, which reinforces it, I believe. We also had J.D. Vance coming out in an interview and arguing that in general, J.D. Vance says in that interview, I'm sort of simplifying, in general, I'm against wars. That means wars we wage on others, wars of aggression. He doesn't call it that, but that's what it is. But we shouldn't shy away from them either. It's a typical J.D. Vance position, right? He's getting ready to suck up to whoever wins in the end. That's J.D. Vance for you. But what I find interesting is that that interview also then turns on this question. Is it possible to have a war with Iran for the US and keep it limited? And what he seems to be saying in that interview is, oh yes, let's not take that option off the table, as they like to say in the US. And I think that's a reaction, maybe has even been sent to do this by Trump himself. It's a reaction to this leak around Dan Kane, right? The chief of staff, or the joint chiefs of staff. And I think Kane very likely actually told Trump something that's realistic and that's real, that even the United States has to be aware that although they are so immensely powerful and so rich, a war against Iran, which is much bigger in every respect than Iraq was, is much more risky. And that also the United States, and I find this particularly interesting, has overstretched its resources already. Because what else are you saying when you're saying, look, we've used so many of our Patriot and THAAD systems, for instance, with the Ukrainians, and also to protect Israel before in the last years, that our stockpiles are depleted. And when you read the whole article, there's also a long discussion of not only that the stockpiles are depleted, but that refilling them is actually hard for the United States, right? And this is something that I think reasonably informed or smart people in the West have known for a while, but a lot of people in the West still don't understand it. They have this image of the United States not only as very powerful, I agree there. Unfortunately, the US is still very powerful. No, they have an image of the United States as having no limits. And that's always nonsense. Of course, the United States has also limits. And in the area of production of very sophisticated arms and weapon systems and their munitions, those limits have actually been reached in the sense of they're very, very close to them and they know it. Some rockets, and it's not even only about air defense, it's also about the famous ones, the THAAD and the Patriot. It's also about standard ammunition that the Navy needs to defend their ships. SM-2, I think, SM-3, SM-6, there are different types of missiles. And those are also no longer plentiful. And their production capacity is limited. It is precisely not. Some people have this weird idea of the United States that they have such an enormous industrial potential still that they can simply just throw a switch and say, oh, I'm making 10 of these missiles now, tomorrow I make 100. No, they can't. They can't. And American military experts who are honest know this. Yes. They have actual limits. The United States is no longer the industrial giant it used to be at the height of World War II and into the 50s and maybe the 60s. It's no longer actually that structure. It's different now. They still can wreak havoc. They're incredibly destructive if they want to be. They have no conscience. They kill as much as they want, or the Israelis want. That all makes them very, very dangerous, but they're not in possession of limitless resources. They simply aren't. And the whole Dan-Kane leak is about, apparently Dan-Kane having had the temerity behind closed doors to tell his president about it, which is basically his job. Right? But then somebody leaked it, right? Yes. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to be flippant about this, but look, I'm also a historian of Germany, and I'm a bit reminded of the relationship between Hitler and his generals. You know, not all these generals. Some generals were so incompetent, German generals, there were some really incompetent ones. The Germans don't like to hear that, it's true, that it didn't matter. But others sort of still knew their business, right? They were not good people. They took part in a horrific war, served a horrific regime, but they knew their business. And yes, we know that behind closed doors, sometimes somebody tried to tell him, actually, we can't hold this front line. Right, we have to take it back, and then usually it went the other way, of course. But it's similar in the sense that both Trump and Hitler, I don't want to compare them in general. I wouldn't actually. It's not serious. But I think they have something in common, something very specific, which is they're infantile and they're narcissists. In the sense of Trump, also, like I think Hitler was, is a person who signals, "I want to hear from you what I want to hear."
Yes.
Don't come to me with reality. I live in wishful thinking world. Tell me how you can make my wishes come true. And if you don't, you're a bad general. Right? And I think that Kane, who is really a general chosen by Trump, this is already very much a Trump person, that Kane, there was a little bit of professional honor left. And it came out and it said, look, Mein Führer, no, I'm sorry, Mr. President, you may want us to do this, and I really, really want to give this to you, but there may be a problem, right?
Yes. Oh my God. By the way, guys, before I go to the next part, which Tarik now mentioned some incompetence, and I was trying to postpone this conversation for later, but I will bring it now. Just before that, I would like to thank Captain Ace Hawk for the generous support, and he also says Judge Knapp or Judge Napolitano, I don't know, Chief Dennis Fritz on. He had Chief Dennis Fritz on. His troops asked why they were fighting. He couldn't answer. He retired over it. Iraq war. So I think a growing amount of US soldiers are unable to rationalize dying for Israel. And I also see this among ordinary people, by the way, among ordinary American people. And I have seen also retired, let's say, Marine and officers in the American forces who served in Iraq and Afghanistan coming back to the United States and being very, very critical of the United States. I would like also to thank our moderator for joining now, Raid Access. Welcome, Habibi, to the live chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as our moderator says, please leave a like, just thumbs up, hit the like button as you're watching this stream, guys. It would really, really help this stream to reach to a wider audience. Tarik, I was planning on showing this on a later stage in our conversation, but since you mentioned incompetence, I would like to show this video to you and to our audience. So Friedrich Merz, he watched in clear fascination. The Kung Fu-inspired robot dance is more than a performance. It is China's soft power made visible in that moment. Unitary robotics stands as a symbol. So he traveled to China, I think to Hangzhou, and they give him some show, basically, of robotics there in China. And he is visibly very bothered, by the way. And he was shocked and bothered. You can check him here, guys. This is the guy here in the middle. That's wild, man.
Yeah. Looks like the thing they have in Terminator 2, you know? Oh.
Like you feel like he's on a defense mode, like he was always standing like this during the video, like he was not as happy as we could assume he was. And this is a Chinese reporter says an iconic photo of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Chinese humanoid robots of Unitary Robotics, and the company's young founder Wang Qingqing.
I love that picture.
When I watched this, I felt like they did it. I don't know, maybe he went there to a robotics exhibition. I don't know. But do you think this would humble the officials in Germany when it comes to China? Because they always have this, you know, when they speak with China, you feel like they're talking down to China, like they're lecturing really China.
Incredible.
Will this
a mouse talking down to an elephant? Really? How do you do that?
It's crazy. Will this humble them a little bit and maybe urge them to focus on Germany's industry, which is unfortunately dying, and something that we wanted to thrive?
Well, look, the fact that he visited, he is after all the chancellor himself. He's not merely the foreign minister or a similar figure. The fact that he visited, I think, already signaled a change of course from the days of the Scholz government and foreign minister Annalena 360 degrees. I have no idea what I'm doing, Baerbock, right? Baerbock, of course, was an extreme case, right? Yes. If people remember, her visits in China, I think there were two, maybe it was one, maybe it's getting a little blurred. But when she visited China, she really turned it into an attempt to spend all her time on lecturing her Chinese hosts. And after a while, they had enough. It's very clear that they just didn't want to talk to this person anymore. So the way that Merz has gone to China now is already different. It's very, very clear that he himself, at least, I think, believes that he is trying to strike a different, more conciliatory, more reasonable tone. My issue with that is that I think Merz has not understood really deep down how conciliatory he will have to be. I think Merz has this weird idea. Let me put it like this. Annalena Baerbock, as insane as that was, went to China, literally went there, right? And tried to teach them, to speak to them from above, quite literally, right? And very aggressively. And I think that Merz now is in the process of going to China, or I think he's just come back, or 1 day ago, and saying, oh, look, I'm no longer as insane as the other person my country sent you. Isn't that great? I want to speak to you between equals. And Merz thinks that that's a great offer. And the Chinese are probably far too polite and sophisticated to tell him this directly. But the Chinese answer to this, and I as a German am very sorry to have to say that. Genuinely, I'm not amused. But the Chinese answer to this in the world as it now is has to be, you're not our equal. You're still not arriving in reality. Reality is that you are looking up to us. That is reality. We are not equals, you and I. You are right that Annalena Baerbock, dear Fritz Merz, you're right. Your Annalena Baerbock was even more insane than you are. But if you really think you're making us a brilliant offer because you're telling us, I want to talk to you as an equal, then you as well are still delusional. That's our real situation. Look, small piece of statistics. It's actually very significant, but it's a small little fragment. Corporate taxes, which is what the big incorporated enterprises pay, which is very important in Germany too. Year on year, January of this year, last month, down as compared to January 1 year ago. You know by how much? 79%.
Wow.
79%. And you can go through anything, any sort of bankruptcy statistics. You can go through energy prices. Every quantitative indicator you dig into nowadays shows you that the German economy is at best comatose and worsening, right? This is where we really are. And so Merz is desperate. I mean, a lot of people think this is a lot about geopolitics. Yeah, to an extent, because the Americans have been kicking around the Germans even more brutally than they usually do. But to a large extent, this is a desperate reach for finding some sort of cooperations with the Chinese that will help with improving the desperate situation of the German economy. This is what this is about. And all of this against the background of China having structurally changed from a German perspective in particular. It's changed a lot anyhow. But for the Germans, I remember a smart uncle of mine when I was young, that's a long time ago, admittedly, but he was saying, it was in the CDU, the conservatives, right?
Yes.
And he was saying, yeah, you know, I mean, we really need to work with China because we're gonna sell so much stuff to them. That's how they were all thinking. Those were the enlightened types. He was a good guy. He was not a mean, arrogant person. But that's how everybody was thinking, who even acknowledged how important China was. It's us, our cars, our stuff, our machine tools, blah, blah, blah. We're going to sell to them. What a market. And now this has crumbled and turned around. We are becoming their market because our products are not competitive enough anymore, right? And all of this is encapsulated in this visit and is, of course, symbolized on purpose, I'm sure on purpose, by the performance of these highly advanced robots that the Chinese have given to Merz. It's not the first time they've shown them. It's not. No. But that they've used that sort of performance in this context obviously tells you something. And let's not forget, you can let a robot do a lot of things to show its sophisticated ability to move and coordinate. But when you let it do Kung Fu, Kung Fu is a martial art. Kung Fu is a martial art. It's a way of fighting, among other things, right? Not only, it's a lot of things. So that's a message as well. I think they were telling him, yeah, we can talk, but you be careful. You be very
Yes.
careful how you talk to us.
But Tarek, when you watch such videos, right? Like, I mean, what does your gut feeling say when you watch something like this? Like, what is the first impression you get? What is the first gut feeling you get when we're moving too fast and too much into a robotic world? Like, this for me looks like scary, right? Like, this is my first reaction when I see robots are being tasked with doing things. I mean, don't we have enough humans in this world to do the task we have? Maybe I think this is very important in manufacturing automobiles, for example, and bigger products that need faster assemblies and perfection. Let's say mathematical perfection, physical perfection, technological and AI perfection.
Mhm.
But all in all, I'm reluctant, and I see that we are probably investing too much in this robotics, and this could, of course, robotics at the end of the day have their software, have the data and the task that we are tasking them, and this will be used sooner or later, just like the dynamite was first allegedly invented to destroy rocks in mountains for good purposes, and then they started dropping it over the heads of the people.
Look, I mean, if you look at this as a general question, like if you turn away from these are Chinese robots, but think of the development of AI and robotics in general, where I'm not an expert. I'm a layperson who is observing this through the media and so on, like many other people.
Yeah, me
I
too.
agree
Just
with you.
gut feeling. I want the
Yeah.
gut feeling. Like the
Yeah.
first time you
I
see,
agree
how do
with
you
you.
feel about it?
No, I agree with you. It's extremely dangerous. Some of the people we know that who are working in these fields, sometimes people who have pioneered these fields, have been warning us that in various ways they're extremely dangerous. We have recently had a very seriously modeled study, actually an experimental study, I should say. I think it was based at King's College. And for those people who don't know, King's College is not a pacifist place. It's a very militaristic place, which is in with the British and NATO forces and also with spying and all sorts of stuff, dear old King's College. So they actually did a study and they used three major AIs. One was the Anthropic model, one was the ChatGPT version, and the third one was Gemini, actually, from Google. And they made them fight against each other in simulated war scenarios. And what they found was that these AIs, in 95% of all simulations, in the end, pushed a nuclear button.
Mm-hmm.
In 95% of these simulations, these AIs in the end started a nuclear war. So they were at war anyhow. The whole simulation was about fighting at war, right? Over resources, countries. But 95% they went nuclear. So that's just a fragment, right? This is not fringe stuff. And it's not being produced by people who are on the pacifist spectrum of politics. This has been produced by people who are very close to the military-industrial intelligence complex, right? So, and we could multiply the examples, but we don't have endless time. Of course, this is extremely dangerous. And people who don't understand this or who diminish it, I think, are extremely uninformed. I'm sorry. Robotics and AI, I don't want to joke about it, but the sort of humanoid, I hesitate to call them that because I don't consider them human in any way, but these humanoid robots and these pseudo dogs that you've also seen, yeah, they will fight humans and they will hunt humans. That will come, definitely. And in fact, it is coming. We have seen not only, but I think in a particular brutal form in the Gaza genocide, the use of both advanced AI technology and actual robots, about which people don't talk a lot.
Yes.
They don't look like in the Terminator. They're not like walking skeletons or something, but they're robots, killer robots, right? And you get all of these very complicated discussions amongst tech people, ethicists, philosophers, lawyers about, when we build this highly technified automated weapon system, will there be a human in the loop? These discussions are almost irrelevant because the human will be taken out of the loop. And the reason is that these systems will be used in war. And as soon as, and they are used in war, and that will create an irresistible logic that says they have to be the fastest, and that means you take the human out. And then there's another point that I need to mention here, which, look at it like this. You can look at these systems and say the greatest danger is that humans will be removed from their decision making before they kill humans. This will definitely happen. It's already happened, I think. But that is also naive, because I'm sorry, why do we think that anything gets better when humans are involved? You mean like the Israeli officers who have been developing and using their AI systems? Things like Daddy is Home, which was designed to exterminate whole families, and which they found funny, which is why it has that name. So I'm sorry, but it's not like if you keep the human in the loop, things will be okay. Among us humans, there are enough totally pathological evil monsters.
That's very
and
great
they will
point.
be combined with the AIs and the robots.
Yes, very good point, Tarik. This I didn't think about it. I don't think it is less worse when there is a human decision maker. Anyways, when in front of our eyes we have seen the weaponization of this program software, such as Daddy is at Home, and the Gospel, and many others. Crazy programs. Which,
and what a blasphemy to call something like that gospel. I mean,
Gospel,
I'm sorry, it's demonic. Somebody who thinks of that name for that software, that's demonic, that's satanic. That's like spitting in the face of everything that's good.
I agree. Tarik, there is a very serious report on the Sun this week, and this goes into very serious levels of, I don't know what to call it, but the Sun here claims that Putin is digging Hamas-style secret tunnels under Belarus to flood Europe with migrants, supposedly with mysterious Middle Eastern tunnel specialists. If we take this kind of tabloid narrative seriously, Tarik, just for a second, what is it really doing politically? Who is it trying to frighten? What policies is it trying to legitimize? Like, what's the point of this? Like, I'm not asking you whether this is true or not. I'm just asking you, what's the point of this article, basically?
Well, it's stoking war panic, stoking war panic, stoking the Russophobia. And also, of course, it's a point where insane Russophobia, delusional Russophobia, merges with anti-migrant sentiment. And I don't mean any anti-migrant sentiment. I mean the most brutal and unhinged side of it. I actually, my father was a migrant, and I do actually understand. I can have a conversation with people in Germany, for instance, or France, who are worried about the rapid change of their societies by immigration. Yes. I can absolutely have that conversation. I can respect these people, and I think they have some points, actually, right? Seriously. But this isn't about people like this. This is about people who are just livid with rage at the idea of somebody with brown skin. Or a Muslim, right? And this goes back a long time, actually. I remember writing articles about a precursor to this years ago, when there was a wave of refugees going through Belarus and reaching the Polish borders, who were treated abysmally by the Poles. People died. And that also was packaged as a form of hybrid war by evil Putin and evil Lukashenko. Now, I'm not excluding, I'm a realist, that Lukashenko, and maybe somebody in Russia, not Putin personally, has other things to do, took a certain pleasure in inconveniencing the Poles. And that's cynical. Human beings are not meant for that. But the whole story was totally overblown. And what people were made to overlook is that whatever game is being played here, maybe no game is being played, but even if a game is being played, there are still human beings in great distress. And it isn't right to just label them, oh, you're a Russian weapon, and therefore I can treat you like dirt. which is exactly what happened. And not only by the Poles, but by the Balts and by the whole EU. I remember this very well because I wrote like 3 articles about this thing, right? So I looked at it again and again. And this is another stage of this. Now we are supposed to believe, they're of course referring to people from Gaza, right? Because they have tunnels. We are supposed to believe that somehow the Russians, Putin personally, has gotten like mysteriously super tunnel builders from Gaza, and they're now tunneling under the Polish border into NATO. I mean, look, it's. I mean, you don't even. It's the sun, obviously. Now here's the problem: 10 years ago or 20 maybe, I would have said that's the sun. The sun is insane. The sun is British built. Of course, they're completely nuts. But by now, Kevork, we have all learned that even if something like that appears in the sun, it's actually our mainstream. Unfortunately, we've all gone build and sun on this shit.
Yes. Tarik, the last part of today's conversation is going to be about, you said his name is Quentin Deranque. Am I pronouncing his name correctly?
Quentin Deranque, more or less. I don't know French.
Quentin Deranque. I searched for him, and in the first 10 articles I have seen, it's all saying that no 2 minutes of silence for him in the European Parliament, deaths of far-right activists in France, France reacts to murder of far-right, everybody's calling him far-right. Who is he? What was his activism about, and how he got killed, and what is the political significance of him being murdered?
So this happened actually, the enormous violence that killed him took him 2 days to die, but the actual attack happened on the 12th of February in the French city of Lyon. And you can call him far right, you can call him new right, you can call him identitarian. I think he saw himself as identitarian. I call him new right as sort of a catch-all term. So yes, he was a very right-wing, very young activist, 23 years of age, data science student. He also was a very serious Catholic, not his whole life, but he had become one. In fact, he was adhering to a traditionalist form of Catholicism, which is pretty strong, actually, meaning those are Catholics who still hold the Mass in Latin and for whom the Vatican isn't conservative enough, right? I say this without irony. It's just to describe it. So that's who we're dealing with. He didn't have a big record of anything. People have tried to dig up stuff on him and found him sometimes pictured at this and that sort of protest and together with other far right, new right, whatever people. But in reality, from everything I can see, he was simply too young, and I think he was also not aggressive enough. He didn't have a horrible record of anything, right? He had his political position. He went out with his guys, and it involved scuffles and protests, but that's basically it. He's killed on the 12th in the evening after a fight, a street brawl, with opponents who call themselves anti-fascists. They come from an organization in France called Jeune Garde, the Young Guard, which is, of course, an allusion to Soviet things and stuff like that. And it's actually a very small organization. It has been officially dissolved a while ago, years ago, but it still exists. People say there's 100, 200 people, but they're very, very committed. And they tend to engage in street fights, right? Which the right as well does, right? I'm not saying they're the only ones. But in this case, it escalated terribly. And what we do know is that at the end, Deranque and 2 others from his group are separated. So they are alone, and then they're attacked by a much larger group of these so-called anti-fascists. Deranque is beaten very badly and kicked, and he is repeatedly kicked when he's on the ground. This we know very well. I mean, the last kick, at least maybe several, hit him when he wasn't moving anymore, and to the head, right? This is a very, very brutal beating. And then he gets up again for a while and he walks, but then he has to go to hospital, and he's in 2 days, he's dead. And it's very, very clear that the cause is that beating. Right? It's not something else that happened. This is it. So in my book, he was murdered, right? You can also call it manslaughter if people want to be like very sophisticated about it. I see it as a murder. And it's abject. Now, the other level here, the question that you have asked is, why and how is it, what's the political effect? It's enormous. It's actually very big. And you have, and I've been looking on YouTube, I've been watching like really mainstream French media, and a lot of people are talking about civil war. Now, let me get this straight. I'm not saying there's a civil war coming. I'm not. But what I found very interesting, that on mainstream media and with the experts that mainstream media filter for us, that they allow to speak, the term comes up again and again. Also not in the sense of it's already on, but in the sense of this killing says we are in a situation where in the worst case, we could slide into something like that, right? And they reference the 1930s, they reference all sorts of dark things. Now, one of the killers, at least, is directly linked to the new left in France, La France Insoumise, the LFI. And the LFI is sort of, I mean, this is very, very far-fetched as a comparison, but it's sort of the BSV of France, right? So it's a new left party. It's a new left party with a certain success, not as much as the new right, which is Rassemblement National, Le Pen's people, right, and now Bardella's people. But these two are on these wings. They're the newcomers, they're the insurgents, they're the ones who get divided as populists. Now, one of the people who was there when Deranque was killed and who has been accused for, in his case, they charged him with instigation of murder, was an assistant to an important LFE member of parliament. And I won't stretch it all out, it gets very complicated. But the thing is, the LFE is now wide open to attack, right? Because basically you can run this enormous campaign against them by saying, look at the LFE, they are in cahoots with street murderers. Their rhetoric has enabled this. This is what this is really all about, right? And I was really interested by this because I used to have a lot of sympathy for the LFE. It's actually shrinking right now. Because I agree with people who say this is unfair. It was not the whole LFE who did this. Obviously not. And of course, when you look at who's saying this, for instance, Jordan Bardella, the leader of the new right, the most important one, I would say right now, he's coming out and like, we have to forbid them. We have to firewall the LFE, which is ironic, right? This is like the AfD saying you should firewall the BSV, right? So, and of course, the French new right, the Rassemblement National, is also being firewalled as good as the established parties still can, right? And so now this guy is saying we have to firewall the new left, right? All against them. And all of this against the backgrounds of municipal elections in March. Very important elections, and everybody is gearing up for presidential elections next year, right? So those people who say the very harsh criticism of the LFE over this murder has political motives, I agree with them. Yeah, it has. But I have to say, in my perspective, what do you expect? This is politics. This, unfortunately, is how it's done. And to me, it's still true that the LFE is not in any way as a whole to blame for this murder, and it's an abject murder. I mean, people should watch the videos. It's disgusting. But the response of the LFE to the murder, and also to the fact that there is a connection to one of the parliamentarians, was very, very callous and very stupid at the same time. They were basically, we still love the young guard, which is like, what? Why do you still love the young guard? I mean, they're a millstone around your neck, among other things. Are you crazy? And they were essentially doing forward defense by saying, we are the victims here. We, the LFE, we are being persecuted. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. And, you know, my upshot from this whole story, you know, I'm really not on the right at all. And my sympathies are with the new left. But my upshot is, if you look at what has been done to that guy, that's the SR. That's SR style. A brawl is one thing. People hit each other sometimes, especially very young people. Okay, fine. Happens. But if you keep kicking somebody in the head who is down and not moving any longer, all right, that makes you a swine. That, to me, you can call yourself an anti-fascist as long as you like. You're at the level of an SR man. And that's it. And I would expect from the LFE, the leadership, Mélenchon, people like that, to actually say, oh my God, get rid of these people. These are not our people. We don't protect them. That's it. And they're doing the opposite. I'm very disappointed. It's also shy politics, but I'm also disappointed morally.
I totally agree on this moral standard, and this applies on the left, on the right, on the center, on everyone. The same way it applies here in Germany when they sanction someone like Hussein, who I think created the platform Red, right?
Redfish.
And they sanctioned him because of his Redfish, because of his reporting on Gaza.
Palestine.
And Palestine, exactly. And then you have another guy who is on the right. I think his name is Martin something in Austria. And this guy has been debanked for over 20 different bank accounts because of his anti-migration opinion. Like the guy literally.
Is this von Witzleben guy? Is it von Witzleben?
I'm not really sure
you mean, is it Zellner? You mean Zellner, the boss?
I think
Zellner, of course.
They even debanked him from his crypto account, Martin Zell. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing. You know, both left and right, debanking people even in their crypto accounts, and legally you need to have some account to live, right, in the 21st century.
Kevork, if I may, I totally agree with you. This whole fashion now to go after people's sort of social existence, to destroy their banking, to make it impossible for them to have transactions, to earn their living. It's being done to people on the left. It's being done to people on the right. I think this should all end, all of it, because it's obviously a way of mutually escalating each other into this insane situation where we all try to where we're not trying to literally hit each other and kill each other, but we are trying to kill each other socially.
Yes.
And I really think we need a new set of rules where we say, wherever you are politically, I'm not going to go after your social existence. Sanctions is not the right way. Debanking is not the right way. And that remains simply true for everyone. And if someone really is a criminal, which is a different story,
100%.
If someone really is a criminal, we have enough laws that then start to work. We have laws for real criminal behavior. The problem with this whole debanking and sanctioning and so on, it's precisely that it's being used against people who are not breaking laws. And that's wrong. That's wrong because we're bringing the political war into every sphere of life then. And nobody is going to be happy at the end.
Guys, this is Hussein's account, Hussein Dogru. He's a journalist, award-winning documentary producer, and founder of Red Streamnet, proudly sanctioned by the EU for covering Palestine. This is his email. I think the nice thing from you to do is to go and follow him and also show some support and amplify his posts when he is at least pleading for popular support to lift the sanctions on him. And then you have Martin.
Well, Zellner, so I have to tell you, Zellner doesn't need your help, Kevork.
I don't think
in his own way.
I think he's big, 173,000 anyways. And the other day he posted something that was so crazy. He posted his bank cards.
No, but look, Kevork, let's be very honest. Zellner is he's the leader of I would still call him the leader, although it's a bit complicated, but I would still call him the leader of the identitarian right in both Austria and Germany. That's Zellner. Okay. And he's a very smart guy, really clever, but I have nothing in common with him politically, obviously. You know, when he's written books, among other things, when he was young, he did really reprehensible stuff, also like smearing swastikas on walls, you know. I accept his explanation that that's no longer him. I accept that actually. But he is a very powerful and deliberate political activist, right? Zellner he has written, I think, 2 very important books. One is called Remigration. He's a key proponent of this idea of making people go away again, essentially. And the other is called Regime Change von Rechts. That's only the subtitle, and they've both been published with Antaios, right? And Antaios is, of course, a very interesting publisher, but a very right-wing publisher, as you also know, Götz Kubitschek's people and so on. So what I'm trying to say is, even with Zellner, I would always be against debanking and all that crap. Because again, my logic is, if somebody is a criminal, there are laws.
Yes.
But if somebody is not a criminal, you don't go after them, because if you're not a criminal, you still have the right to be politically active, say your thing, even if I hate it, and I expect the same in return. This whole extension of the battle zone into our social existence is a dead end, right? We're going to debank each other out of the world if we go on like this.
And guys,
but don't worry about Zellner. He can help himself.
Don't worry about Zellner. Worry about a professor called Tarik Cyril Amar and his ex-account.
Worry about me. Exactly.
Worry about Tarik, guys, and his ex-account. This is his ex-account. As you can see, he is very, very much suppressed by X.
I have to
algorithmically, like it's crazy. Go and follow him, guys. Tarik on
if they
X,
can find me. It's
really
hard.
You need to type his full name, Tarik Cyril Amar, to find him in the search, because they even hid him from the search tab. That would be great, guys, if you can follow Tarik there. He's also posting his Substack all the time on his X account, so through that you can also read his article. But today we jumped over the 1 hour and 10 minutes, so I would like to thank our dear friend Tarik Cyril Amar for this weekly show on Syriana Analysis. I'm very happy to do this every week. Hundreds and hundreds of people came today. 700 people were watching this live. We appreciate you guys all, whether you watch this on YouTube or on Rumble. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you to our moderator, Red Access. Guys, before leaving this stream, please leave a like, thumbs up on this video. It would really help this channel and also this program, and subscribe to Syriana Analysis. If you like, and if you can go one step further and support this independent work, the easy thing to do is just become a patron. The link is calling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. If you don't like to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below and pinned in the first comment. Me and Tarik will see you next Friday, guys, and myself will come definitely to do another stream on Monday. I wish you peace, and I wish you a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Salam.
Bye-bye.
Bye.